Just gonna run quick introductions. I'm Water Spinner Tanner with OSO, joined today by Tog. Um, Tog might be a little bit staying in the background today. Said that he was, you know, feeling his own ways today. So we can all feel that. But we are joined today with Mike from Cron Cat. Mike, I was gonna just give you the floor for a little bit to introduce yourself, kind of go over what brought you into crypto to begin with, and yeah, just a kind of light introduction for yourself, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, sure. Hey guys, I'm Mike Purvis, one of the co-founders of Cron Cat, and I'm kind of relatively late to the Web3 scene. It was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago when I went to a meetup that was being hosted by my co-founder Trevor here in Portland, Oregon. I just like happened to see this like blockchain meetup like a couple days before the very first one showed up, and Trevor did an awesome job of like showing everyone exactly how to get a wallet going, how to write a Solidity smart contract, like, and yeah, just as soon as I understood what was going on, I was like, okay, well, I cannot really work in Web3 anymore. So I just did this insane just hunt of like, how can I get any sort of blockchain adjacent job? Literally like cold messaging people on LinkedIn. I never thought I'd be that kind of person, being like, hey, can I work for Coinbase? Can I work for Gemini? Just anything that's close. And I actually landed at Near Protocol, which was a huge blessing. And so I started working in Near about 9 months before mainnet. It was a really small team, and if you are kind of familiar with Near, it's like literally started by geniuses, like very, very, very solid tech. So I worked there for a while and kind of got really a hands-on feel for like smart contract wallets because that's like the default in Near. And yeah, then I made a really kind of silly and fun example. One of my past projects is crossword.xyz, which is basically like Coinbase Earn, except for it's all on chain and it all uses like near smart contracts and these like special like keys that they have. And yeah, Cosmos really caught my eye because I wasn't really seeing the adoption on Near. And for whatever reason, I think that we can have a retro in like 10 years, but like Cosmos is just like buzzing with like really smart people trying different stuff all day, every day. Like what was it, 2 hours ago, Larry just posted his account abstraction example, and it's just like boom, like he just did it, and that's the vibe that I love, and so that really attracted us to Cosmos.
That's awesome. So, so it sounds like you came from like a Web two background. You were already involved, kind of with production and everything. That's it's really awesome to hear about your first experience into crypto being kind of like a very hands-on, personal thing. That you that I guess I'm getting at like my personal experience with crypto. The first time was, uh, you know, all on the internet, all in chat rooms. I didn't meet anyone face to face and talk about crypto for I think probably like a year or two into my journey. I mean, I started relatively early back in like 2015, 2016, but still, it's really cool to hear that you were at an event and hands-on were there doing it. So that's really awesome to hear. So I guess going forward, you talked a little bit. I talked briefly about your interest in the cosmos. Can you just talk a little more, I guess, on that XYZ project, and just a little bit more on that before we get into what CronCat is? I didn't know that you had worked on something like that, like in Coinbase Earn, so now I'm just kind of interested in a little bit on that.
Oh yeah, and actually it's kind of fun because my plan was to actually make crossword.xyz for in Cosmosm because I think I've got it figured out. And
Okay.
you know, uh Larry's tweet today that I hope everyone goes and finds is all about just authz, which is a really powerful module that's been around in Cosmos for a little bit, but hasn't really been like taking off like I thought it would. I think it's like massive. I think there's like tons of potential. And so this crossword.xyz, maybe I'll leave it as a little bit of a teaser, but you could absolutely use authz and fee grant to have like a really fun workflow. People can feel free to kind of use that as they wish. And then maybe more to the point of like why Cosmos and all of that. So there's a whole app chain thesis which I think is interesting, but that's really for kind of building your own L1. And I think the beauty that Cron Cat like kind of stepped into is that like I do think that it's best that Cron Cat, this very ambitious project, which is bringing like if this then that to blockchain and just providing trustless automation, meaning that like your smart contract, which previously was never able to say, hey, execute this method at noon every day, please. Maybe it's like cleaning up state, maybe it's like renewing a subscription or sending out a subscription. So you weren't able to do that before, and so with Cron Cat you actually can do that. And this time, I think it does make sense to use CosmWasm instead of doing a Cosmos SDK sort of layer one approach. But I also think this may be, well, time will tell, but this may be like an amazing sort of case study where something can start on the app level in CosmWasm, and then as things grow and progress, maybe it eventually turn into an L1 if that makes sense. And that is something that is like really unique to Cosmos. I think if I were to go to a different ecosystem and try this, you'd basically you'd have like one way of figuring it out. And you'd probably have like one SDK that you have to learn and then just kind of like hope that the people are there and see the potential. But with Cosmos, we can, we got our security audit done. It's a pretty massive project in terms of like code base. And now we can deploy this security audited code to like a dozen chains, anything that has CosmWasm. So that is like extremely powerful and like very it fits what we're going for very well.
Yeah, that's yeah, talking about CosmWasm stuff. You guys coming out as an app first, it alleviates you having to have your whole validator set, having everything come together for an L1 when what you're trying to solve right now is so immediate and so impactful, so I guess my next question, and you already kind of touched on that. First off, congrats on the prop passing and being able to deploy onto Osmosis. That's going to be amazing. Very, very excited about that. So if we could just get a little more into what Cron Cat is solving. You mentioned that it's if this then that for the interchain. And you're now operating on the smart contract level rather than L1. So I guess just like what brought you to think this is something that needs to be solved? Where did that idea come from?
Yeah.
And when it started to solidify and kind of the roadmap from there.
Yeah, so I remember kind of very clearly. There was, I think it was like October, the first year that I joined Near, and I was porting some Chainlink Solidity smart contracts into Rust, right? Like into the Near SDK. And I really just got deep into like how oracles work. And oracles are basically, as everyone knows, like if you have a DeFi app that wants to ask for a price, you would create basically a request on an Oracle smart contract, and then off chain there are these like sort of oracles that have like private keys and all that, and they're just like waiting to see if they can help you get some prices on there, and they get paid a certain amount for kind of participating in this network. So it's just like this incentive, oracles are incentivized to like give you prices. Now this gets a little bit funky because there's so much involved in telling the truth regarding prices, and there's like a lot of money at stake. But it was that mechanism of like, you use someone else's smart contract, like a Chainlink Oracle smart contract, you store a request, someone offline is able to essentially like answer that in the future. And then as soon as they answer it, kind of like the request goes away. So it's a very similar sort of architecture for Cron Cat, except we aren't passing in price feeds. We are just saying like, hey, this smart contract wants to get called at noon every single day. So there's a sort of like a legion of agents. We call them agents in the same way that there's like a legion of oracles off chain, and they're just waiting for that moment. It can either be a time like noon, or it can be like a block, block 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they'd be like, cool, it's ready. And so then they will send in a transaction to Cron Cat, and we will, obviously ensure that, we cannot trust these agents at all. We ensure that it's the right timing, and then we execute whatever was supposed to be done at exactly noon that day. So the crazy part about this is it's extremely generic, meaning that like you would basically craft some JSON saying like, I would like to call this smart contract and then also this smart contract either at noon or at noon, repeating every minute or something. Or you can even say, I would like to have this task fire off as soon as this one little piece of state changes. Or as soon as this balance reaches this threshold, go ahead and like claim and restake or whatever. And so that second part of it is really the if this then that, because it is so damn generic that it's all JSON. I've been looking at some of the code for other kind of like competitors, I suppose, in the space. Like Solana has one. There's a cool deal that deals a lot with DeFi on Ethereum. And if you look at the sort of like code base, it is kind of morphing and changing as they add new features. Like dollar cost averaging was a pull request to one of these sort of competitor automation products. But that really doesn't happen with Cron Cat, because if you want a DCA, you're literally just sort of constructing a JSON message that describes exactly what you want to do. So of course, with great power comes great responsibility. So we try our best in Cron Cat not to let people do crazy stuff. So we are not allowing every single Cosmos message to be sort of like scheduled in the future. We are allowing bank send and basically execution of smart contracts. And I think that is just like going to open massive, massive doors.
Yeah, that's already you're already touching on a whole field of things that were not able to happen before. The ability that the if this then that brings is a pretty. I guess at this moment I want to real quick. I'm going to get to your question, Yieldmos. But before we go into that, there was a great time to bring up kind of anyone that's unaware. Where did you get that name from? I kind of have Cron and Linux. I was wondering, it's an execution running in the background, always at executing on time, executing the process or function that you wanted to get. So yeah, if we could just get into that, and then also Felix asked, why not Cron dogs?
Cron dogs. I mean, actually, my puppy is like the thing that I love most in the world, besides my fiance. And so I mean, that's a strong argument. I'm not sure about Pickle, but I'll sleep on it. I see that in the chat too. Let's see. So okay, so Cron. Like, what is Cron? I think, I mean, Cron Cat is kind of a funny name. I think right now in Cosmos, like, we are still in the early days. It's been the early days for a decade, yes, but like we are still in the early days, and I think that there's much more developers right now than perhaps just like complete end users. Like I don't think my grandma is going to be using, Kepler or anything like that. So while we're building, this whole future, I think it is largely like engineers who are here, and I think that Cosmos is maybe the spot where all the cool ideas are happening. I could be wrong. Obviously, that sounds very kind of maxi. But I just see tons of people trying a whole bunch of stuff, and that is great. And so Cron is kind of catering to that. Cron in typical Web 2 form means like, the example I like to use is like, if anyone's ever like been an admin on like a WordPress site, and you sort of like log into the back end to maybe like do a publication or something. As soon as you log in, it says like, hey, these two plugins like have updates, or it'll say like, hey, your WordPress core needs to be updated actually. And you're kind of like, wait, so how did you know that? And typically how this works behind the scenes is like there's a server, just a computer who's like, hosting your website, and there's a little teeny script, maybe it's like once a day at midnight, is just checking. It like pings to see if like every single WordPress plugin like has updates and all of that. And so that's how it updates. But there is no such thing in smart contracts at all. And so we kind of borrowed that term and of course added cat to the end of it. Instead of dog on accident, and here we are.
That's awesome. I think Cron Cat is just perfect. And yeah, the execution that you guys are bringing with the smart contracts and bringing chronological events was pretty amazing. So also forgive me, Yield Moist. He wanted to know if there were what specific messages that you guys were afraid to enable. I don't know if you want if you can touch on some of them that that you didn't enable and possibly give reasons why. That would be amazing.
Yeah, so we actually in the early days, like way before the audit, we had like stake in there, for instance. But really like Croncat is not supposed to be like holding your money or like being in custody of anything, really. I think like and this is going to become much more easy to explain now that I said this will be the third time now that Larry has kind of shown the power of auth. I think we are going to now really be able to show people that like Croncat is a tool. It's like a machine that like is a cooperative machine. There are agents who are offline who are getting paid. If they refuse to uh, participate, they get booted. Someone else gets brought in. They make money. Very similar to like oracles. So we have this just basically this like completely trustless machine. And all it needs to do to operate is have one person that would like to schedule something in the future, and then one person who would like to get paid to do that. And so, with regards to like what messages we don't want to be allowed, like we actually did remove the staking message because you're not supposed to be staking from Croncat. Like what you want to do is like have Croncat call like a smart contract that you control that is able to like stake for you. So that's really the whole point of Croncat is to kind of like be this like traffic sign and like sending messages exactly when the time is right. And we didn't want to even like have any sort of temptation where people are going to like give Croncat like $10,000 and then suddenly Croncat is like supposed to be staking for them or something like that. So I think that's how it started out. I guess that one is not really a security measure necessarily, but I believe Pupmos also was messaging Trevor with some really weird oddities on like, did you know you could send this one like type of message and have these special fields and it'll do something totally crazy? And I don't remember the details on that, but that's when we were like, all right, hold on. Like, let's just, cut this down, just bank send and just execute message. And, I just said that Croncat is really not supposed to be custodying your funds. So like, why would we have bank send? I think that would be a valid question. And for me, like, I think it's fine if you're like, oh, cool, I want to buy this NFT. I want to buy like a Behold Idols NFT on Juno as soon as it becomes available. So that's going to be like what, like 30 Juno or 40 Juno or something. That's actually like so low that like maybe it does make sense to allow bank send, but that's really kind of like one of the reasons why we have that in there.
Okay, so you brought up you brought up the functionality with auth, and you're kind of like it seems like you're letting liquidity aggregators and like auto compounders do their thing with auth. So Felix has a question. He's asking Croncat works with auth because then it wouldn't be Croncat being in control, and isn't message send more of a liability? If you can touch on that. So yeah, Croncat and auth, a little more in that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that the community at large has a lot has a little ways to go in terms of like really understanding that like signing with your Kepler account every single time is kind of like not how we want to do it in like 5 years. So I think we're all sort of growing together on that. I think that like if there were only one message that we would allow, it would absolutely be execute smart contract method. And like people can probably, I'm sure someone's going to make one that like doesn't really do what they wanted it to do. You're going to make your own JSON and you submit your own JSON, and whatever that JSON says to do, it's going to do. Now we actually do have some checks that make sure that like, okay, you're trying to call a smart contract, but it doesn't exist. Sorry, homie, like that's not going to work. We don't want to put that in our state. But that's just kind of like a minor validation. So I cannot think of like anything that someone would accidentally do to call a smart contract that would like ruin them. The entire flow will have to be very like explicitly done by the end user. So I kind of I'm having a hard time seeing some security problems with that.
I just want to mention really quickly, just you wait. I'm sure you will run across something that someone does by accident or on purpose. Because let's be real, I feel like if there is a end user that will find an exploit by accident, it's going to be a crypto user. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually I did want to take a moment to say that like this is my first time kind of like being really closely in touch with a security audit firm, and it was Oak Security, and they did an awesome job. Like it was kind of amazing because they reviewed it over 2 weeks. By the way, thank you, Osmosis. Osmosis helped us get secure that audit, and their notes. It was like a 25-page paper. It's all published. It's all like on their GitHub repo. Anyone can look at it. We addressed all the issues. But they really understood what was going on in a deep level, and I wasn't sure if anyone was going to be able to understand what was going on a deep level. But that gave me a lot of confidence that like this is a great approach, and yeah, I really respect those folks.
Uh, yeah, so let's, right now we're talking about, uploading your own JSON, you know, creating your own message and all of that. You guys are making this, you're pivoting kind of towards a general purpose execution layer, as I'm going to steal some of your words. And then, so before when you were on, you had something called, I think, cron schedule or something on near. Is that correct?
Yes, so the first version of Cron Cat was on Near, and yeah, Trevor actually wrote this entire crate himself that was essentially using the cron spec, and it's probably like a weird thing to kind of try to explain, in audio. But basically, when you're doing that whole like my WordPress site should check every day at midnight, you write out this little funny sort of script that has to deal with like numbers and spaces and asterisks and slashes, and you basically like can say, I want it to be every second or like every 16th second, and the same thing applies for minutes, hours, days of the week, year, that kind of thing. And we actually added seconds. So the regular cron spec only the smallest granularity is minutes. We actually added seconds as well. So our cron spec from that crate that Trevor wrote is actually even more granular, which I think is great. But that is not the only way, because we realized some folks would want to do stuff on an exact block height too. And so in the near version, we actually sort of tried to combine the two ideas of like, okay, well, we can kind of calculate the time based on the block height and all that. Then when it came time to just completely rewrite the whole thing in Cos and Wasm, we're like, nope, these are actually two separate things. We're going to store them as, we're not going to try to kind of like merge them. So that was a new thing that came to Cos and Wasm. And then the whole if this, then that, where like any piece of state changes, you can react upon it. That is like so massive. Like, I think you need to put on like your open-minded thinking cap to like allow it to seep into your brain. It's like really, really crazy. And so this Cosmos version does have that, and that does not exist on the Near one. So Near, I kind of consider that like an MVP, honestly. It's still running, like right now. Like you can go to near.cron.cat. A bunch of validators are using CronCat to sort of like automatically ping to help them like calculate the rewards. But man, we made a lot of improvements on the Cos and Wasm one.
Nice. Yeah. So that was kind of the your opportunity to field test and get legitimate results and legitimate reviews going forward. Real quick before I get into my next couple questions, I see another question from Yield Moist. He was also interested in the agents model versus leveraging the X cron module.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the questions, but I'm a lizard brain. Yeah, so I know that I think what was it 2 days ago, Shane from Stargaze was saying this is the first use of the cron module. I don't know if that was just on Stargaze or what. I actually, to be honest, my brain is overflowing with everything that we're doing that I haven't done like a deep dive into this. I do think that the agents model like makes a ton of sense. And I think that, in the future, in years to come, maybe that grows into something that validators just like have as part of their like, infra script. Like for instance, Pikachu, amazing person, has like this Ansible script that will just like, if you're trying to set up servers and RPCs and relayers and stuff, you can just like add one line probably to a Docker image to like start a Cron Cat agent, and people are just using this already to make RPCs and do all of that hosting. So I feel like this is a great place to start, and we have actually I can mention too that in Near, the agent was just TypeScript, and it's been running for a long time. I think it's like over a year without ever crashing, which is awesome. But we did rewrite that into Rust because like we did want to have like the security of Rust, and also like kind of like scalability. So that's also kind of a huge improvement, is changing programming languages for the agent. And so it is, I got quite a few running right now. The security audit folks had sort of a light suggestion that we like be really careful about the public registration of agents, because this entire time, the whole point of Cron Cat is like, we want, if me and Trevor get hit by a bus, Cron Cat just lives on. Like, that's the entire point. Like, this is like, I hope this is like the one thing that I give to the world in Web3 in my lifetime is like, hey, we can actually automate stuff, and like I can just step away and people can run agents, and people in the Philippines can run agents and make some money, and this all just kind of like works. But that, that being said, there was a suggestion from the security audit that like in the beginning, let's do progressive decentralization. So if you go to docs.cron.cat, you'll see a whole explanation that I wrote about how we're going to do this approach. So in the beginning, it will be using like whitelists. But yeah, like it's completely going to be like open, and everyone can use it. And, the co-founders and stuff can just step away and go on to do other stuff.
Nice. Yeah, that's a very big fountain of information that I feel like I just got unloaded with. The fact that you guys are, not to be morbid, but the fact that you guys are, taking into account that how automated you want it to be, that it can continue running without your input on it. That's something that exemplifies the extra automation layer that Cron Cat is solving.
Yeah, and maybe I can camp here for a second too. Like if you like, we had an interview with Del Rey, who I'm sure you've seen in like CT, and even our older interviews regarding Cron Cat, we were very like kind of staunchly in the camp that like Cron Cat is a public good. Like it was just like kind of a necessity to survive, to do the whole like, let's do a business and raise money and like do the whole like old world beg for VC money and stuff. So we did that. But like our hearts have always been in the sort of like public goods space. And so we're kind of like, shimming this in there. It's funny, I listened to this great interview with Sam Altman, and he had a very similar line too, where he was just like, oh yeah, we, apparently in the world that we're born into, we have to just make everything about money. So we did that, and here we are. And that's kind of like similar vibes, I think, with Cron Cat. I hope that it's going to really improve like massively the way that people can use the blockchain. I think in ways that I can't even imagine, honestly. And yeah, I think it might be sort of like, right now we have like account abstraction as like a buzzword, and before it was like NFTs, and before it was like DeFi summer. I think that like automation might be one of these things in the next like year or so that like completely changes. There's going to be like automation summer. Like I think it's that big of an idea.
Amazing. Dan B, I see you're up here if you wanted to just chat real quick.
Thanks, guys. Hey, thanks, Mike. I appreciate the info so far. Can you talk a little bit more about like the running the agent process? Like what's involved in that? Is it similar to like running a validator or a relayer? And also like how the monetization works in that?
Sure. Yeah. So the Rust daemon is pretty darn small. Like you can run this thing on a Raspberry Pi. Like all it's doing is you basically say, I hereby would like to register to be a Cron Cat agent, and then you go through the process. We do some basic checks saying like, hey, you have like barely any tokens in your account. Are you sure you want to do this? So we kind of make you, have like maybe like half a Juno or even less to kind of get in there. But then you are put into the pending queue. You're not going to immediately be sort of fulfilling tasks. And as the number of tasks increase, then we scale with that. So the agents are checking like every block. And I think when you're pending, we're checking even less than that, like maybe every 10 blocks or something, being like, hey, am I active yet? And it will say, yes, you are. And then you will immediately send in, this is all automatic, obviously. The daemon does all this, so it's super easy to do yourself. It will automatically say, oh, cool, I'm allowed to become an active agent. I hereby accept the nomination. And then this person becomes, or this agent becomes an active agent. And then you are on the hook. So this means that if, I don't know, there's a monsoon happening and power is going out all the time, maybe that's not a good time to become an active agent, because if you aren't fulfilling tasks, then we're going to boot you. But basically, the agents will be checking every single block, like, is there something for me to do? Is there something for me to do? And how many things, if so? And notice that, like, we don't say, hey, Dan B would like a Cron Cat task to call his smart contract. We don't do that, because then someone who's the enemy of Dan B is going to be like, oh, I have an agent, I'm just not going to do it, or whatever. Like that is impossible with Cron Cat. We actually took a pretty big detour in like kind of our architecture to make sure that all the agent knows is that they're on the hook for 3 tasks this block, and then they go and they fulfill it. Things get a little bit different when there's an if this then that, because then you have to actually say like, oh yeah, this one piece of state changed, therefore like that one task is now valid. So that's sort of a little bit separate. But so the agent is fulfilling Dan's task, but it doesn't even know it. And the gas that is sent into Cron Cat to sort of like kick off the cross contract calls and fulfill this task, the gas that is sent in, we have like basically a cut that goes to the agent. And of course, a cut that goes to the Cron Cat DAO, and they're like the same. So that is how we do it, is a percentage of the gas.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that. Just to go a little further into that, what kind of flexibility is there for the agents in like choosing which transactions they run? Do they have any? Like, say, for example, there was someone in the US who was concerned about like doing anything on the OFAC list. Would they be able to have that kind of control?
The only control is you can opt in or out of basically answering what we call event-driven tasks, which is sort of the if this then that. But no, like this is sort of intentionally like people don't know what they're doing. They're just participating in this network, and we're not gonna really like shield anyone or like dox anyone or even like give preference to anyone. It's just a machine.
Okay, so you're saying that the actual thing that we're processing like isn't clear. Like we don't know, hey, I'm about to process a execute contract function for this address with this payload.
Correct.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like there's another in the chat.
Yeah, I was gonna. Felix has a great question about, or I saw one at least about who is signing and executing these transactions, right? As an agent network. Yeah, like at the end of this, who is the end signer and transactor? Yeah,
totally. So it's funny because like Near has a little bit of an advantage over this in a certain sense, but so the agents are actually the ones that like lob in a transaction with enough gas to basically fire off this task that someone has created. And so I do a lot of this stuff because I actually built this little SDK to make it extremely easy for people to if you have a DeFi app on Osmosis, for instance, you can actually create Cron Cat tasks very easily from your Cosmosm smart contract. So I made that like very simple, tons of helper functions and stuff. And so I know very intimately that like when you say, hey, call my contract in 10 minutes or whatever, and that finally happens, if you are to inspect that invocation, then it looks like it's coming from the Cron Cat manager. contract. We have like a handful of contracts. So it does look like it's coming from there, right? Because in Cosmos, you really only have access to the like sender, which is like would be considered the predecessor in like near terms. But what we can do further than that is we can say, okay, cool. I'm like my method is getting invoked, but I want to make sure this wasn't like someone else's task. You know, what if I said, hey, call me in 10 minutes, and some other person was being a joker, and they said, hey, call him in 5 minutes. We need to make sure that like when I get called, it is actually from my task, and so we can ensure that we can actually like the way that we have the validation set up, we ensure that it is from a sanctioned Cron Cat manager smart contract because we're using a factory architecture, we can absolutely make sure of this. We make sure that the task was created by the person that you specify, basically. And furthermore, we even by default validate saying like, I'm getting called by Cron Cat manager from my own task. Is this happening in the same block and same transaction index? Which in layman's terms means like I am in the middle of a cross-contract call from Cron Cat. Yes, this is absolutely from me, and there's no way that this can be kind of fooled. So this gives a ton of power where you can be like, you can have absolute certainty that like you are being called by the task that you created.
Okay, so I a little confused as well, Felix. So I guess real quick I guess on a first walk us through on a layman's terms level, and then walk us through again on a technical level. So I just created a contract with Cron Cat on Osmosis, and every day at 1800 UTC after Epic, I want to send funds. I want to send assets from one wallet to another wallet that's arbitrary. I get so. Walk us through how what are the events that transpire as
Sure.
me uploading the contract up to execution.
Yes, and I think maybe I made things a little bit more confusing than they need to be. So, either a smart contract can create a Cron Cat task, or like you can as well. You can just straight up call it directly. And actually, there's a website that we have that is like almost completely like done and amazing, where you can just like click through and make these things. So you click through, and that's going to make that JSON for you, so you don't have to know anything basically. And you say, hey, in this case where you're talking about, I would like to, move some tokens from this place to that place. Like, I believe the best way to do this is to have the person go through a nice little flow where they create their own smart contract that no one else can call. They grant auth-z permissions to that smart contract, and then you just have Cron Cat call that bad boy. And then that contract will get called kind of like intermittently by Cron Cat, like however often you want. And that will be able to do stuff on your behalf. It'll be able to, move tokens or whatever authorization you've possibly given it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm excited for the once Cron Cat spreads its wings out to other places and stuff like Stargaze and whatnot, automatically getting into an NFT mint when the mint opens or something like that. The degenerate possibilities are going to be amazing.
And maybe I can talk to Felix's questions that's happening right now. So the agents execute that smart contract. Okay, so just to be super clear, I think what you're saying is, I think we're on the same page, but like I'll be super clear and actually go back to the Oracle example. So when I create, like I say, hey, I'm a DeFi smart contract, Mr. Oracle smart contract, I would like to create a request to give me the price of basic attention token, right? And then the Oracle's offline, they look at that Oracle smart contract, they see the request, and then they get the answer, and then they send that answer back to where? They don't send it to me, they send it to the Oracle smart contract so that it knows like, oh, this has been fulfilled, right? And then that Oracle smart contract then sort of like does a cross contract call back to me. So like I think it's very important to kind of know that like that's sort of the flow and how it works in oracles as well as Cron Cat. So the agents are calling Cron Cat contracts. The Cron Cat contract does like what in Cosmosm it's called sub messages, but that's just means like cross contract calls. So the Cron Cat manager is the one that's actually like the sender. If you're looking at like how, who, if you're talking about the contract that you want to call, the contract is like, hey, who just called me? It's going to say Cron Cat manager. Sweet.
Um, so I get just a random quick question that I had just off top. In MintScan, would we see, because these are OS transactions, I know sometimes in MintScan those show up a little, they show up a little wonky and whatnot.
Yeah.
Are these go like if I do, like a SYN transaction, but it has the OS smart contract to it, is that won't show up or go on chain as just a executed SYN transaction, right? That would be an OS executed transaction.
Well, this is a wonderful question. So I think it was like 2 weekends ago. It was like a Friday evening. I didn't have anything to do. And I was like, I'm just going to get into Auth again because after Cosmoverse, I went to the HackWasm hackathon and I did one attempt and I took the wrong approach. And so anyway, I like picked that up again. And by Sunday, I had completely like figured out Auth and it's really, really powerful and it was easier than I thought. And so what I did was I wrote a smart contract that would automatically delegate for me on my behalf. Super simple. And then when to your exact question, I was like, wait, so what does MintScan think happened here, basically? And so I went to MintScan and I went to my account and it said, oh, by the way, dude, you just delegated. It was like your most recent transaction is you delegated, but it wasn't me. It was a smart contract doing it for me, which is really rad, I think. I'm not sure if that people think that's a feature or a bug, but like I think that's really, really intuitive. So you don't even have to worry about like, I go to MintScan, I can't see what's happening. It's just like, oh yeah, if it's doing it on behalf of you, it looks like it's you.
Nice. That's very good. And to that point, Yieldmoist, I don't know if you just saw what he said. He's kind of a resident Aussie master.
Yeah.
Get MintScan and other block explorers to show those transactions better, because just that simple. I don't want to say simple. I don't want to downplay it, but quote unquote that outwardly looking simple improvement on user interface. There's so many times where as an OSL member, there's a lot of it's not as bad, but when you're first coming around and aren't positive, aren't sure with Aussies and how it looks on MintScan, sometimes users come in and aren't sure where their daily epics went, the daily rewards, and then you find out that it was some kind of some kind of yield compounder that the block explorer is just not showing up right. So then it's interesting to tell to just say like, well, you can see that you have auth, you have it on, you can see it on Kepler, you can see that you've authorized it, you're good. I can't show you past this, so yeah, that improvement would be amazing across the board for a standard of living type improvement.
Absolutely. If I can take a moment to like nerd snipe, I mean, it seems like the questions that I'm getting are like, people really kind of understand this stuff, which is great. So one thing that I discovered that I want to do like a little proof of concept before going to Osmosis, and I will definitely be there, is, okay, so in that example where I had auth delegate on my behalf, right? There is a limitation that sort of sidesteps. So when I call like a smart contract normally from my end or EOA, you can only do one per block, actually, which is quite limiting. If you do it from auth, that is not the case, because the smart contract like it basically like delivered an envelope to the protocol saying like, I don't know what's in this, but I think you're supposed to just execute this and see if you're allowed to. And so what this means is like, I could have like 100 different transactions happen in the same block from me, but it's through auth-c. Where otherwise, if I tried to do 100 transactions in the same block, it would take literally 100 blocks to do it. So this is actually like a huge, like, trippy way to kind of scale if you're in the business where you need to do that. And of course, I would say the Cron Cat agents are in that business. Pretty cool.
So I just had this just popped into my mind. We were talking about security issues earlier and whatnot. And I'm not. This might already not be possible, but if I wanted to game the system or possibly do like a DDoS, could I make a smart contract that it creates an absorbent amount of transactions to try and execute all at once and try to like just basically try to like freeze anything. Is that even?
I would challenge anyone to give it a shot.
Okay.
We would just make money, and the agents would just make money.
I like that. I like that GIF. Felix is perfect. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So I don't really. I guess I don't really have too many more big questions. I kind of just big congrats on Osmosis first off as well. And also I guess something coming up like stream swap stuff. Will I be able to at the moment, is that a message that I can create to join a stream swap? And can I make an OSI smart contract to interact with other apps like that on Osmosis?
And stream swaps, I was looking at this kind of earlier, and that's like, are you talking about the Omniflix?
Yes,
thing?
sorry, yeah, the Omniflix thing.
And they're using custom messages because I believe that Omniflix is mostly has a lot of logic in Go, right? So it's probably custom messages.
I'm pretty sure. I have like on the technical level, I haven't looked much into it, but
Okay. I little birdie did tell me that it's possible that Cosmosm is coming to Omniflix. So that's massive. I would say that if it's currently using those kinds of bespoke messages, then that is actually not going to be something that will work. I think that I'll be frank that like our launch has been sort of like embarrassingly long, and that's because this is such a massive idea, and so we're like really like stapling blinders onto our foreheads, and it's bleeding and it hurts, but we have to do it. So I probably would not be in favor of adding like new messages at this point, but like really wanting to see like the crazy Cambrian explosion that can happen just from the Cosmosm execute messages.
Yeah. So getting to, I can see a couple messages from Felix. First asks how much does an execution cost, and then the next one about limiting messages to smart contract executes and message send.
Let's see. Yeah. I mean, you can totally make a smart contract that does other transaction types. I don't really see that as I don't know how that could be an attack vector because you could own yourself. But I don't see how anyone else would kind of. I don't really understand that too much. Execution cost does happen. So of course it's based on what the task does, right? So we even have a like internal like gas calculation, like an estimator inside of the Cron Cat manager. Pretty awesome. Shout out to DHusk, who I think has been a contributor to DAO. He wrote these two really rad crates, Cosm Tome and Cosm Orc, and we use those to kind of figure out like, okay, one task execution is going to be about this much gas. And so when the agents send in gas, then we determine like which tasks, can get executed and stuff. And then again, the agents and the DAO like get a little cut of the gas percentage. So in terms of how much does the execution cost, that's going to really depend on like what the payload is. Because you can have like, you can say, hey, call this one smart contract. You can say, hey, try calling like 17 smart contracts. So it's really going to depend on that. I think that we are like aiming for around like 20 cents per like shaving that off as a middleman. So linking the manager DApp. Right now it's like smart contracts, but yes, we're on GitHub. Everything's open source. GitHub.com/croncats. Just like someone else took Cron Cat on Twitter. Someone else took Cron Cat on GitHub. Bastards.
Yeah, yeah, they're just parking just to be dicks, man.
Right.
Um, so I see a quick question from Pickle. If makes profit, go for it. Else stay put. Is
Definitely.
this possible? Yeah, possible with like looking into oracles and that kind of stuff, right? If price go up, execute transaction send.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to the guys from Abstract OS recently, and they're like, just using like liquidity positions basically in certain pools to sort of get a rough estimate for how much a token price is. And yeah, you just use those queries, so you can literally, when you're doing the if this then that kind of thing, there are these two fields in your task. Actually, I'm going to put a pause right here and just say that like I have a section in our documentation called Anatomy of a Task, and this will go over every single field and like whether or not you might want to use it. So that's docs.cron.cat, and then you have to click on docs again. It's weird. And then there's a section called Anatomy of a Task. And so like a typical task, like if I want to send Dan B like 1 Juno, then I'm just going to fill out a couple little fields here and leave a few of them like blank or null. If I want to say, this is totally ridiculous, but like I want to send Dan B 1 Juno if his balance falls below 10, right? Then you would use some fields that were previously sort of left empty, and you would insert a query. You'd be like, I would like to query, and then you fulfill all the details like, this is Dan's address, here's the amount I want it to fall under, that kind of thing. So totally doable.
There's only one issue that I have with your documentation site, and that is the code blocks are in light mode.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. But otherwise, it's wonderful documentation.
Totally, yeah. I'm also a dark mode fan, and even getting the syntax highlighting and colors was a little bit of a pain. But like we're actually kind of a small team in the bear markets, and so like we're doing the best we can without like burning ourselves out. But I would like to have a better docs at some point for sure.
What are you using now, if you don't mind me asking? Completely off topic.
Yeah, I think it's called Gridsum.
Oh, okay. I've heard of them.
Yeah. It's a little bit outdated. I have to use like a Node 16 or something, so it doesn't work with modern ones. But
that's great.
I feel like there was another good question up there. Let's see. I think it was actually Felix. Did you understand? Like, I feel like maybe I didn't fully understand your question about like if you can have Cron Cat call one of your smart contracts, then why wouldn't you just put that into the manager? Is that sort of the question? Oh yeah. I think it's just like decreasing the surface area of like what can go wrong basically in the beginning, because we're an extremely small team. And like, so in the same way that we're doing progressive decentralization for the agents, that actually like is really going to be helpful for just our sanity of like what can go wrong. And then it really does all come down to a foggy recollection of Pupmos telling Trevor that there was some weird thing you could do with a seemingly benign message, and have it like do unexpected stuff. And then we were like, all right, let's just like pare this down and like keep the scope there. But by no means am I saying like these are the only two messages now and forever. I think this is just like we gotta launch. I think this is gonna like provide a ton of stuff you can do, and then we're gonna iterate with you folks. Like this is like we're releasing it to people, and then people are going to see what they can do and what they can't do, and we'll iterate accordingly. I've been talking to Kato, which is a Fiat on-ramp, and they're actually using Cron Cat. I'm working with a dev right now to do like successive retries. So it will basically say, oh, cool, this smart contract should be getting this amount of funds. Did it happen yet? No. Did it happen yet? No. Did it happen yet? And then like after a certain amount of retries, then it goes through, and if it doesn't enough retries and it's like still not there, then let's do the failure logic, right? So I mean, like I would never have thought of that until they like reached out and are building it. So as soon as we like hear what people are doing, I think that we'll have another discussion about like, oh yeah, you're right. This message definitely should get in the next version.
Yeah.
Dan asked a good question. Pardon. How is the schedule balanced?
How is this schedule balanced?
Yeah, how is scheduling balanced across, I'm guessing across different actors or people?
Across all the agents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you might want to dig into like the docs that we have, the docs.rs specifically. That's kind of like more detailed ones. But we use the same idea that we had in Near, which is basically like you need to think of time in terms of blocks, right? Because like the validator is going to give you nanoseconds, and that's like way too granular. So we basically say like, is there anything to do in this slot of time that we're in? And furthermore, before we even do that, was there anything that was somehow like not taken care of in any previous slot? And so there is no way that a task will just sort of get like steamrolled over and like forgotten. That just won't happen because we're always looking backward, and we actually use some cool like data structure tricks to kind of like figure that kind of thing out. And then when it comes to like which agents get to take what task, there's a whole entire like piece of logic in there, and it comes down. If you look into the implementation of I think it's in the agents one where you say like get current task is the name of the method, and it will do some logic to be like, all right, cool, this person was indeed assigned to 3 tasks, but this person was assigned to do 4 tasks because that's going to happen. There's going to be like a modulus at some point. So we basically, when the agent calls in and they say, hey sir, I was told to do 4 tasks, then we confirm that, and that's how we kind of keep things a little bit fair. I imagine that like we're gonna also be improving that aspect a little bit, because as we head toward progressive decentralization, we want to make sure that like all the agents are getting the like equal amount and all that kind of stuff. But it's like we have a really good implementation right now. Oh yeah, thanks for that. That's the one, Agents Cosmos. Yeah, they'll go over the kind of the game plan.
Yeah. Again, your documentation is very well laid out. I'll give you credit where credit is due, especially here in the Cosmos. Not gonna lie,
thanks.
some of our documentation is rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan. I think if you look at that, it'll all make sense. It might be a little bit. I might be going super in the weeds if I like really get into it. But like a bunch of agents are assigned a thing, and then we confirm. And it was not simple to make that happen. I think that might actually be kind of like its own little invention in and of itself. But yeah, that was one thing that we felt very strongly about, was that people shouldn't know what they're doing and just sort of being anti-censorship. And then like a couple months later, the whole tornado cache thing happened, and we were like, yeah, we're glad we did it this way.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like you got, obviously, just looking at your docs, I can tell there's been an insane amount of thought put into all of this, and yeah, very excited to continue to see what else comes forward. So we're definitely kind of getting a little to the end of time here. So before I let Tog introduce, he's going to announce some of the NFT giveaway winners that we have for this episode. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask Mike if there's anything else you wanted to say, any last remarks, any possible alpha that you may have for us. And yeah, thank you so much for everything today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This has been really, really fun to think about. I mean, especially for me, I feel like I'm kind of a prisoner sometimes in this startup because I'm just thinking about the same thing, and it's just me and my co-founder, and really having amazing questions and detailed questions is like, it just feels great to actually share all this stuff. And I just want to double down that like I think that maybe the coolest part of Cron Cat is going to be actually integrating this into applications. Like I think it's cool to have end users do stuff and whatnot, but like we're talking to Atlas DAO who wants to basically be like, hey, all of our members who own NFTs to become a member will get paid part of the staking rewards every month as long as they're still holding the NFT automatically, right? Like that kind of thing like can happen. So you can set up that, or you can set up something even simpler like payroll. I don't know if you guys have tried to do payroll with DAOs. I have. It's hard.
It's
Why is it
terrible.
hard?
It's
Because
terrible.
humans are hard.
Yeah, right. No, it's terrible. The OSL struggles with it every time we do payroll. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, and so I mean, especially for, this isn't going to be like the end all be all fix because someone might leave the DAO or something like that, and then you'd have to like change how it works. But if you have like a team of six and you're like, hey, let's just pay them all, a couple $1,000 a month automatically, then you just like set and forget. And if you like this, then you can see how your task is doing, and you're like, oh, cool, like I actually want this to keep going for a few more months, and then you can add some more tokens to this task, which actually I did realize there's maybe a huge goof that I didn't really mention. So when you create a task, you basically will send in some native tokens. So I'm like, hey, I would like to do payroll on my DAO. Here's 5 Juno, and then this is going to go on, for like months, and then you can check that balance and re-up it basically. And then the micropayments that are going to the agent and the Croncat DAO like come from that initial like amount of tokens that you gave. Um, and also, I want to say that like this is very important because I feel like I think this is obvious, but people seem to get this wrong a lot. If your Croncat task like fails, you get refunded everything that like wasn't used. Like we're not gonna like, keep your money or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or you can just say like, oh, this my payroll task ran 3 times. I'm kind of done with this. You can cancel your task and you get all your money back. So it's like super low risk to even just like try it out. I think that's really kind of important to mention.
All right. Pardon me. Yes. Tanner, anything else?
No, I'm all good. I just wanted to say thank you again, Mike. Congrats on Osmosis, and yeah, we will definitely be talking soon.
Definitely.
Right on. Well, yeah, I'm really excited about this, and thanks for all the help. I mean, I really think that Osmosis has been like kind of gone above and beyond, and that really meant a lot. It's not been an easy journey. So true thanks from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah. And before you run away, if you do run away, in our Telegram chat, please send us a Stargaze address. As a thank you, we would love to send you an Aussie NFT if you would take one off of our
I would love
hands.
that.
And give us a Stargaze address, and we'll get you one after the show with the rest of these that I'll be sending out.
I actually nabbed Mike.stars, and it's one of the happiest days of my life.
Yes, congratulations. Hope you didn't have to pay
Awesome.
1,000 stars for it like we would have to pay for Ozzy.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Right. All right. Well, we wanted to thank everyone today who showed up and who stayed for most of the show, and who asked questions today, with some Aussie NFTs. So yes, yes, you did come right at the end. It is all right though. We have picked some of the, using a random number generator, old school fashion, a dice. I picked some random folks out of the crowd to win some Aussie NFTs. I am going to ask everyone who has won to please send me their Stargaze address, either in a DM, or send Water Spinner a DM with a Stargaze address that you would like to receive the Aussie NFT. We absolutely are so proud of our artist who did all of this art, and we want to share as many Aussies as we can. For those who don't know, the OSL released a community good, very low cost NFT project with Aussies, our little friendly science experiment. And we had an absolute blast on launch day, which was kind of a stealth launch, and just watched them all get eaten up like, you know, fish and water. It was great. So congratulations to Kaku, Dan, Felix, Pickle, Ole, Portaburu, Minotaur, X1K, and Marlin, who all won Aussie NFTs today. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you all for staying around as well or asking questions. It was absolutely amazing. Every time we do this, we are always impressed by the questions that are coming in. And I hope everyone has a good weekend if it is a weekend for you. And if not, try not to work too hard. So yeah, send us Stargaze address either in a DM. For those who know me, you know where to get a hold of me. If you want to send a DM to Water Spinner as well, please do so. We'll be reaching out if we don't hear from you probably in a couple of hours. All right? Everyone good?
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Hope we get
Thank
to
you. Thank you. Have a good day,
Thanks so much,
everyone.
all. Bye-bye.